Day 7, Measurability Fallacy. Tina had been reading further chapters in her book about critical thinking, and she wanted to apply her newly gained knowledge to their quest. So when she and Chris met up to continue with their investigation, she formulated her newest theory. I have been reading about empiricism. It seems to conclude something. It needs to be observed, measured and verified. This book states that it is the basis for figuring out what is true and what is not. So doesn't that mean we need measurable and observable evidence that Santa exists before we believe? Something concrete? And if we do not have concrete and factual measurable proof, doesn't that mean that it is proof that he doesn't exist? Chris paused and reflected. I do think that proof and investigation are important, but don't you think that's maybe a bit one-sided to say that only measurable things are real? For example, joy and happiness are undeniably real, but impossible to measure and to scientifically prove. Love, kindness, friendship, dreams, we can't quantify them, but that certainly does not mean they do not exist. Or taking the question of whether God exists, that can only be personally experienced, not measured and proven. Tina scrunched up her face while thinking hard. But if we cannot measure and objectively compare, how do we know that our perception is not just a delusion? Chris rummaged in his desk and took out a wooden box that he opened and flipped through the content, and finally found a postcard that he showed Tina with the words, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." Einstein. Chris went on to say, I know we are on the quest for the full and objective truth, but maybe there is a danger in overemphasizing the factual. Maybe it is even dangerous to rely too much on being objective and measuring. Even if we measure something, who is to say that our interpretation of what we are measuring is correct? My brother Matthew shared the following joke with me. It kind of shows that measurement alone does not give knowledge, but still needs to be interpreted. A mathematician, a physicist, and an engineer are riding a train through Scotland. The engineer looks out the window, sees a black sheep, and exclaims, "Hey, all sheep are black in Scotland." The physicist looks out the window and corrects the engineer. Strictly speaking, all we know is that there is at least one black sheep in Scotland. The mathematician looks out the window and corrects the physicist. Strictly speaking, all we know is that at least one side of one sheep is black in Scotland. Let's take the argument, if the cookies are gone on Christmas Day, then Santa was there. This is certainly an observation that can be measured. Cookies are present on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Day, they are not. But without interpretation, what does that tell us about Santa Claus being real? Tina pouted and said, I do understand your perspective. Drawing conclusions from a measurement can be just as uncertain and incorrect as not measuring at all. It sometimes appears more certain simply because it's measured. But isn't knowing the truth crucial to avoid manipulation and to live without illusions? I mean, it's frustrating not to be certain. There must be a way to achieve certainty, Tina exclaimed in frustration. Chris grinned and pulled out another 3 postcards. That nothing is certain, and not even that. Ringer nuts. To be uncertain is to be uncomfortable, but to be certain is to be ridiculous, Socrates. The problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wiser people so full of doubts. Bertrand Russell. Tina smiled mischievously. You do know that a quote is not a proof that what you are saying is true, don't you? She said. Chris had to laugh at that, of course, but I kind of like the way those people put things in such elegant words. My grandfather used to give me quote postcards every time I saw him, and they remind me of him and his wisdom. Tina looked thoughtful. Wisdom, I think there is something to that. It's something that develops over time, a product of a person's intuition, from what he has experienced and learned from life. It can serve as a source of understanding the world. I also read somewhere that intuition is highly effective because it integrates more information stored in our brains than we can consciously connect with our logical thinking mind. Thus, it can be much more effective than sitting down and logically reasoning through things or measuring them. However, intuition may it be entirely wrong. One cannot be certain. Tina sighed. What is the point of this search for truth if in the end we cannot be certain anyway, she asked. Isn't it a waste of time to strive for knowledge and understanding? Chris placed 4 postcards on the table. He had been filing through them while Tina thought and talked. All opinions are not equal. Some are a great deal more robust, sophisticated, and well supported in logic and argument than others. Douglas Adams. The quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning. Uncertainty is the very condition to impel men to unfold their powers. Erich Fromm. Let go of certainty. The opposite isn't uncertainty, it's openness, curiosity, and a willingness to embrace paradox rather than to choose sides. Tony Schwartz. Intuition will tell the thinking mind where to look next. Jonas Salk. I believe the point is that even though we may not always attain certainty, we can strive to enhance our understanding. We can attempt to measure what is measurable, draw conclusions, learn from our mistakes, and derive improved conclusions. The result will not be complete knowledge or truth, but the ability to make better, wiser decisions. I think we should be able to discover if Santa brings me presents every year. However, even if not, we will have learned a lot on the way. We will have refined our worldview and learned how to use knowledge and logic to make sound decisions and uncover fallacious arguments. This journey also teaches us humility, that we will not always be able to know everything. It teaches us the benefits of using our minds to the best of our ability and striving for objective truth. But it also teaches us to not excessively rely on our knowledge or our methodology, because that leads to blindness. Tina smiled and added, Now it sounds like wise grandfather is talking through you. So they added to their book of learnings. Always make sure to differentiate between measurement and interpretation of the measurement, so as not to jump to conclusions. Check if you really are measuring what you want to measure. Are you proving what you want to prove? Some things are real even if they cannot be proved or measured. The search for truth is valuable, even if one does not ascertain the whole truth. In this case, the journey is the point. To hone one's understanding, to come closer to the truth, and to hereby understand the world better, train the intuition, and to make better decisions. Do not underestimate the importance of logic and critical thinking, but do not think you can solve and understand everything by it. Logic and critical thinking help us to see the limits of our insights, and they train our intuition. Measurability fallacy, or the quantifiability fallacy. This fallacy occurs when someone argues that if something cannot be measured or quantified, it must not exist or is not important. It overlooks the possibility that in certain aspects of reality or phenomena may exist or have value despite not being easily measurable or quantifiable. This fallacy often arises in situations where subjective experiences, emotions, or abstract concepts are dismissed because they cannot be precisely measured. Scholar Thomas Persing thus describes the modernist fallacy of falsely and inappropriately applying norms, standardizations, and data point requirements to quantify productivity or success. This is similar to complex questions, measurability, and oversimplification fallacies where the user attempts to categorize complicated, diverse topics into terms that, when measured, suit their position. The McNamara fallacy, also known as the quantitative fallacy, named for Robert McNamara, the U.S. Secretary of Defense from 1961 to 1968, involves making a decision based solely on quantitative observations or metrics and ignoring all others. The reason given is often that these other observations cannot be proven. When the McNamara discipline is applied too literally, the first step to measure whatever can be easily measured. The second step is to disregard that which can't easily be measured, or given as a quantitative value. The third step is to presume that what can't be measured easily isn't really important. The fourth step is to say that what can't be easily measured really doesn't exist.